joining us. I'm Karen Kilroy from Kilroy Blockchain, and I'm excited to introduce this meeting today that is a presentation by DFM Data Corp. They've been working very hard on building this a digital freight matching clearinghouse type scenario that will make the entire industry stronger. And when I had the good fortune to meet Michael Darden from DFM Data through Linda Getz from the blockchain chamber, and thank you for that, Linda. Throughout 2020, my company, Kilroy Blockchain, which is based in Austin, has been building the framework that this will all run in for Michael. And just to give you a little bit of background about me, my company, Kilroy Blockchain, like I said, we're in Austin. We just won the IBM COVID-19 Back to Work contest. We were grand prize winners for our blockchain network that we call Casey. If you want to know more about it, you can visit casey.health. And I also wear another hat. And the other hat that I wear is for Texas Blockchain Committee and Texas Blockchain Council. And both of the organizations are related, and I'll let you look them up, and you'll hear a little bit more about it when I introduce Lee Bratcher, who's the president of the Texas Blockchain Council. But Texas Blockchain Council is an organization that was put together of companies in Texas like mine who want to bring blockchain to the attention of the legislature so we can get some blockchain-friendly laws passed in Texas. And not only, and we're not talking about just allowing things like cryptocurrency and those types of things, but actually taking blockchain seriously as an audit trail that's available to government agencies to be able to audit what's going on, smart contracts that can proactively enable some of the laws of the government, and help people with compliance in a proactive way, because if a smart contract is governing something, you can't do the wrong thing. So we've been talking, and Lee can talk about this more, but in Texas we started talking about Texas Blockchain Service Network, and have that be like a utility that goes throughout all of Texas, where if someone wants to do a blockchain application, they're not starting from the ground up. Because it's a network by nature, we think that there could be an infrastructure built that other things can ride upon that will make it much easier and faster to implement. So we all work together, we get together, we get ahead much faster, which is really what we need to do. And so knowing that we were talking about building Texas Blockchain Service Network, and knowing what I know about all the progress that DFM Data has already made, a lot of concrete progress, I thought, well, maybe these two concepts should be married together, and maybe we can get DFM Data's project to help inform the Texas Blockchain Service Network is what's really needed in this. Now we have a real project with real freight being hauled around Texas, a real problem with phantom loads posted that need cleansing, and I thought, what a good way for technologists to not build this Texas Blockchain Service Network in a bubble, but instead build it for the people who need to use it. And I believe the Texas digital freight matching industry is a really great first example. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful, profitable industry. Of course, it can fluctuate, and it's good to keep those loads as profitable as they can be. And I really think that what DFM Data is doing can benefit Texas a great deal because of that. And even more than that, it can help us to learn what is possible with blockchain. What can we do? How can we build these collaborative networks that help people to keep their confidential information confidential, but still reveal enough provide for the greater good. And blockchain is really good at that. And in this case, the greater good would be cleansing those phantom loads so everybody makes more money. So anyway, that in a nutshell, that's why I thought about bringing Michael here and introducing him to Lee Bratcher and the rest of the folks at the Texas Blockchain Committee. And through this, he's also met the Texas Department of Transportation, and you'll hear about that. Today we have the pleasure of being at the Hedera offices, and Hedera is a provider of a decentralized public network. And you might want to check them out and see what all they do. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lee Bratcher. Lee is the president of the Texas Blockchain Council, and there you go.
Thanks, Karen. Well, I'll follow your lead. I'll follow your lead
Sure.
and stand up. And again, thank you for the introduction, Karen. I am honored to be here and support what DFM Data is doing. Several months ago, when we learned of the phantom data problem, our industry association, which I should say the nonprofit industry association, comprised of about 20 companies in Texas and several hundred individual blockchain enthusiasts who exist to make Texas a blockchain friendly jurisdiction for innovation. And we have influence in the Texas legislature. We have subject matter experts and lobbyists who are working to that end, and we have several bills that we will work to pass in the upcoming session in January. And so when Karen made these introductions, we're looking for pilot programs to demonstrate the blockchain service network to the state of Texas. And our legislative champions who plan on passing these bills asked us to coordinate with Texas state agencies and private companies who want to come together in sort of a public-private partnership and provide real value for the state of Texas and real value for the businesses that operate here. And so that's what we're doing. This is just one of 3 pilots that's in the works, and it's I think probably the most exciting one because it has the most industry impact and the most chance to improve the data that not only the industry is working with, but the state is using as well. And so we've had a few meetings with Texas Department of Transportation. One of the individuals who was going to be here today, but had a death in the family yesterday and cannot be here, Scott Rawls, currently an independent consultant and former TxDOT manager. He has really brought to the table several members of TxDOT, including Darren Anderson, the Chief Innovation Officer for TxDOT. And they're really excited about this initiative as well. So we look forward to connecting with them further about that. And the last thing I'll say is, as an industry association, we're working for the success of our members, and we're here to influence local government and the legislature to that end as well. And so we've got influence with those legislators who will in turn pass legislation. One of the legislation pieces that we're looking at is a bill that would enable a blockchain service network, a public-private partnership that would create an infrastructure for these kinds of projects to be built on. And Karen and her team would do that implementation. And it's really not hard. Karen can tell you the technical pieces are in place. What's difficult is the governance pieces and the political pieces. So that's kind of what I'm here for. I know we have Denise on the phone, who's a governance expert, and DFM Data has got the governance piece right. So I look forward to hearing more about it and for you guys to hear about the governance of DFM Data, because that's a special part of what this organization has and has to offer the industry. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for everybody for coming. I'm very excited to be here in Texas and appreciative for Hedera Hashgraph for being able to host us in this beautiful conference room. I don't know how well it's coming across from there, but it is a tech-enabled room that is quite spectacular. Lee, thanks for having us here as well, and for connecting us with Texas DOT and for your efforts and being able to coordinate the opportunities. And Karen, thanks again for helping to be able to bring this opportunity here into Texas. And the place that we really wanted to start with is Texas the place to be able to lead digital freight matching. There's a real initiative that's come up in the past 5 years specifically, mostly since the sale of Coyote Logistics to UPS for $8 billion out of nowhere, and the world kind of said, well, wait a minute, what is that, and why did they sell it for that much, and what's it for? And today, you can read the publications that are industry trade pubs, and there are mergers of one-off sharing, and we're going to do business with this other company and try to be able to connect the industry, and we want more market share. We want to do a strategic partnership with this other company, and there's 250 of these things, and 250 companies doing one-off relationships with somebody else is not helpful in the big scheme of things. And what we're truly doing is innovating through a cycle that is normally going to be really big potholes, but because of the fact that I did this back in the early 2000s, I've seen a lot of these potholes. And I know that there's an ability for these digital freight matching companies to be able to share elements of data that would enable them to have interoperability in a way that hasn't been conceived before. And in 2017, there was a writer in the trade publications that was identifying that there was this utopian environment, that all of this data could be available in a central marketplace, but his main piece was about the fact that who could do this? If you were a shipper, nobody was going to trust you with their carrier information to do it. If you were a carrier, nobody's going to trust you with their shipper information to do it, and their other carrier information. If you're a broker, you weren't going to trust anybody to do it. It was going to take some bolt of lightning, some shock, some different set of circumstances to be able to bring this to light. And I think when I read it, it was a really meaningful thing to me because I was involved in this so early on, but it led me to believe that a patent could help organize this industry and the rules could be helped facilitated by that. And when I started looking at the patent that I'd written years ago and trying to get it back, it was a large undertaking, but it was successful. And then when you get it back, it's what am I going to do with it? And the stars have just been aligning. It's really encouraging to be able to watch from 100 DFMs in the system when I first bought the patent back in 2019 to now there's 260 of them. And it's not going to slow down. Those 260 represent a grand total of 3% of the market share. So there's lots of room here, lots of opportunity, right time, right place, right company. We just need to be able to get started with the right partners that enable the flow of data to aid the other participants in the marketplace. And the centralized opportunity of working with a state like Texas to be able to bring together 24 of those companies and can just roll from there is an exciting one for me and for my team. So my job at the beginning was to kind of frame the whole thing of what it looks like in a freight revolution. And this is happening. It's happening every day, and there's more and more digital matching that's taking place, but we're creating this problem that we can solve only if there's a utility in the middle, and DFM Data Corp is here to do. David, you.
Hi. So, yeah, I'm David Wolff. I'm the VP of Marketing and Communications for DFM Data Corp, and happy to be able to let's start at the beginning. Like there's a problem, Michael was just referencing it, there's a problem in the industry that's unique to digital freight, and in particular, it's a sort of an outcropping of freight matching. And we just thought we'd take a couple minutes right here at the beginning here and just sort of level set so we're all on the same page about what are we really talking about? What is this problem exactly? And so this slide is indicating the graphic on the side is just a really simplified view of the nature of this problem, but it's a human problem that results in a data problem. The data is actually fine. It's really just that there are some behaviors driving it, and there's a little hygiene needed on the back end to deal with it, which is what we're here to do. So this problem, we call it phantom data. The idea, like, why is it called phantom data? It's because it looks like it's data that you loads and capacity that you could match in your data set if you're a DFM, but you can't because it's already booked. And the way this happens is that shippers, carriers, brokers, they're really just routinely posting their availability into multiple marketplaces and apps and platforms and load boards all at once. The sensibility is, if I do that, there's a better chance of me getting a match quickly. And I might even get some sense of the pricing, and before I get too happy, I might be able to get a better price just by seeing more reactions to my availability. So you have multiple loads. A load is now booked on one of those platforms, and the remaining platforms that have that same listing now continue to show it as listed even though it's booked. So that's the essence of the problem. So you have now a data set that has a little bit of pollution of matches that can't be done. And it causes some problems in the operations. So the impacts are that we've talked with DFMs, and we have done also a bit of research on our own, and we know that this data issue of unmatchable capacity is happening all day, every day. If you're a DFM trying to get your jobs done for your customers, for your shipper, carriers, and broker customers, and it undermines the algorithm. It's something you can't really optimize for. You can sense it, you can predict that it's going to happen, you can report that it happened, but you can't actually identify a bit of phantom data until you actually match it and then discover, hey, I don't think that truck's actually on the way.
Yeah, I think the funniest part of this whole thing, David, is the fact that the survey results were so telling, because we didn't even have the right scale in there of how often it happens. I mean,
Yeah.
we were looking like once a day, twice a day, 5 times a day, and the answers we were getting back are like, no, this is happening all day, every load, every order. It's prolific. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and as we get deeper into the survey, we'll be able to kind of quantify in more specific terms, so kind of the range, or so if you're a DFM that focuses on shippers, or versus one on carriers, or if you're a 3PL, the effects may be different. The effects of different marketplaces may be different, but we'll have better data on that and be able to report it back to the industry pretty soon. So you get the gist. You have unmatchable loads in your data set, and it impacts the customer experience. It's causing confusion and delays and cancellations and lost deals. And then it undermines the big promise. The big promise of digital freight matching and these freight platforms is that you can do fully automated freight. And in essence, you can do it, but it's not happening that way. So back to the survey, these were just some, these are the kind of the impacts that really rose to the surface as being things we can say, this is happening. Incidents multiple times a day, as Michael just said. It takes time to recover. So if you have an incident where now you have a delay and you have to rebook, it can take a few minutes, but it can also take several hours to get that shipper back knowing he's got a truck on the way. And then it's adding to your labor costs. You have people who they would normally be dealing with exceptions and customer relationship work. And in this case, they're now dealing with rebooking a load and doing it in a manual fashion, and having to do a lot of communication. So it's adding to labor costs. Obviously, it's interfering with customer satisfaction and loyalty. It undermines job satisfaction. We actually were asking in the survey, how much more would you like your job if this problem went away? And people are saying a lot. This is annoying. And they're worried about their reputation individually. It affects their customer relationship. And then when we ask, like, how important is it to get rid of this? People consider this to be an urgent problem in the industry. So there's an opportunity cost to not acting. And we sensed that even though the data is still coming in, what is this phenomenon? How does it affect the different types of DFMs? Because this is a human-driven thing, and because as the awareness of and appreciation for and demand grows for digital freight services that include matching, we're pretty sure we're going to be looking at an exponential rise in the incident rate of interruptions based on false matches or false positive matches. So left unchecked, this is what the graph looks like. And at the upper end of the scale, we could be talking about hundreds of incidents per day per platform. And it could be worse than that. So it's not meant to scare as much as to say, we need to get going. We need to get out ahead of this. There's an opportunity to take action now. The longer we wait, the worse the problem's going to be.
One of the keys, David, is like you said, the guiding principle that's been there in the past is that if I post it out to more places, I'll get better results and faster results. And because of the fact that everybody in this industry is trying to be able to facilitate that better match faster, they're building tools that enable them to duplicate and replicate the demand that they know of faster, which means that they can re-tender that same tendered load that they just got so many more duplicated, triplicated, quadruplicated times digitally, just by clicking a button. But when they build the tool to be able to push it to numerous platforms, they don't have the same accountability for the recycling value of it. And that's really what's missing from this equation is the connection of yeah, it's helpful to fish in numerous ponds, but if you caught fish on every one of those bowls, you only got 2 hands. And eventually you only can reel it in one at a time, you're gonna lose 6 fishing bowls. And we don't lose fishing bowls here, instead we lose customers. And we're trying to be able to solve for that problem by enabling the real information to reside in these digital platform systems.
By the way, my name is Luis. I'm the COO for a company called Go By Truck, DFM. Mike brought me up on board. We concentrate on customer experience, not only customer service, right? So how we do this whole thing, there's an underlying problem that you guys are not capturing is that when you get all these phantom loads, right? The shipper or the carrier go to DAT because DAT right now, whether you like it or not, is the authority for pricing. You shift from being 3 drivers for 1 load to being now 20 loads per 1 driver because of the phantom load. Now the driver becomes a commodity and he can set the price.
That's correct. It's a dynamic market.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the thing is that nobody's capturing the dynamic market.
Yep.
We do it all the time because again we go to DAT for baseline pricing, but all our pricing is based on relationships. We do not set prices based on DAT.
Got it.
And every company has their own business rules of how to be able to operate, right? Because there are some companies like Molo had a release last week of the fact that they're service driven and they won't change prices and they won't turn back freight. But that's a risky way to be able to run your business.
That's also right. That's right. So based on customer experience, if you look at what we call the angry market, it's so the nice market was pre-COVID-19. Then it came to COVID-19 as a nice market, and as soon as people start changing regulations, the market got angry, and then the company was like, the carriers were like, oh no, now I'm gonna give it to you. You're gonna pay me twice as much because now we are few drivers for a whole bunch of loads that we have to move. So
and you want me to increase my insurance from $250,000
that's
to
right.
$750,000?
That's not even taking that into account.
That's what I'm saying. It's just, that's how regulation does, though, in the industry, and it's one of the reasons to be able to connect with the governance side, be able to include those sort of elements that are important from a governmental standpoint.
Yeah, but a couple of things that you mentioned that I really like is the fact that you take into account feelings, right? Because the DAT doesn't take into account feelings. So through our customer experience, we're being able to keep the prices. First, we didn't lose any carrier. We didn't lose any shippers for COVID-19. And then we were able to keep the prices at plus or minus $200 from pre-COVID-19. We own no contracts. We own no lanes. This is all a secret handshake and a friendship. But so I like where we're going with this whole kind of like touchy feeling and make sure that the market, we have a good pulse on the market.
Thank you, most appreciate it.
So next up, I'm going to hand the mouse to Mike Turner. He's our VP of Sales, and we're going to switch gears. We've established the problem. And thanks, Luis, for your embellishment. That's helpful perspective. And now we're going to kind of pivot to what's the solution, and interoperability is a key component, and Mike's going to introduce us to that notion. So Mike, you have the mouse.
All right, thank you for that, David, and good morning all. As we have established the impact of phantom data, and David certainly referenced the exponential growth potentially happening there, one of the things we see in the marketplace is that we do have companies starting to work together, companies starting to come together to identify how they solve issues. But we also know that one DFM working with one DFM is not the viable scenario from an overarching solution strategy standpoint. And Michael Darden had an interesting discussion with the gentleman on the screen, Bruce Brenizer, in reference to interoperability. And we believe that interoperability is a critical component that has to happen in order for the industry to drive change and come together to solve the phantom data scenario. And the other component, as a reminder and reflection, is that there is significant historical context to the aspect of interoperability. Quite frankly, we couldn't have this Zoom call or this meeting unless interoperability existed. So let me tee up the video. I think it's an important topic. It's about 7 minutes, but it gives the context of what we're talking about, and I'll come back on the other side.
Digital freight matching is like Uber, but for trucking. So when they have a load to move someplace, they're looking for a driver, there's a platform that they can go to be able to put their load in and get it so that they match to a closed truck.
A similar, maybe a parallel analogy, and that would be the internet, and the fact that, you know, in the 50s and 60s, we had computing technology. We had mainframe computers that were never designed to interoperate. The large computers were designed for a single purpose, banking, transportation, like airline reservation systems. At some point, if you wanted to, again, they were never designed to interoperate. There was no need for a banking mainframe to communicate with a transportation mainframe, reservation system mainframe like Delta. Actually, it didn't come from the university system. It came from the Department of Defense that was a little bit concerned that the telephone network had single points of failure. Being a circuit switch network, you had a single dedicated circuit between two connection points. And should that circuit be disconnected in any way, telephone pole goes down, cable gets cut, that network is dissolved. That connection is interrupted. So we need a network that can survive any failure of a single point of connection. So they wanted a packet switch network. So they wanted to actually interconnect, to develop a network that would survive an interruption, which is what came out of that was the packet switch network. So they connected 4 university systems, and the fact that the university systems, being academic computers, were used for academics, research. Universities had pretty robust mainframe systems. So the idea was, can we connect those mainframe systems with one another for the purpose of sharing information? The problem was each of those computers was designed individually with their own operating system, with their own networking protocols to connect it with individual terminals that were connecting to the mainframes. So what they had to do was define a canonical form, a common format for data to be transmitted. Well, rather than redesign the mainframe, they created a completely separate computer whose sole purpose was to transfer or to translate the information from that mainframe computer into a common format, one that could transmit from one computer to another. So these smaller computers that sat in front of the mainframe computers were known as IMPs, interface message processors. And so these would define that common format for the transmission of data. So now, if I had two different systems, I would have to create one common format. If I had three different systems, system A, system B, system C, I would have to create a transmission protocol between A and B, between B and C, and between C and A. So I have to have three separate translation protocols. Well, it doesn't progress in a linear fashion from there. If I add a fourth, A, B, C, D, now I have to have A to B, B to C, C to D, D to A,
C to
A to C, or B to C, B to D. Yeah, so I need 6. Well, if you add a fifth, now you need 10. There's a formula for it. N times N minus 1 over 2. N being the number of systems, N minus 1 being the fact that I don't have to communicate with myself. So, and that because A to B doesn't need a separate translation from B to A. So A to B works to translate. So everything's divided by 2. So anyway, so for 4 systems, you have 4 times 3, or 12 divided by 2, or 6. Now you got 5 systems, 5 times 4, 20 divided by 2, 10. You add a 6, you have 15. So if you've got, imagine 100 different computers, 100 times 99, now you have 4,500 separate translation programs. It's untenable. I mean, it's just unworkable. So the idea of creating an IMP meant that you only had to translate into that common format. So now it's a one-to-one. If you have 100 systems, you only need 100 translation programs just to get that system to connect to the canonical or common format. Therein lied the challenge. So this company developed IMPs to sit in front of the mainframe computers, and that was the start, the birth of an inter-networking protocol, internet protocol, or what we now know as the internet. And that's all evolved to be the TCP/IP, Internet Protocol Transmission Control Protocols that we all know and love, or we love but we don't know. Recently retired after 30 years with Bell South AT&T. The last 20 years of that was part of AT&T University, where I worked specifically with salespeople and sales leadership in the area of either sales and leadership skills, or because I have such a passion for the technology behind the products that we sell, they wanted me to teach the technologies, because I just think what we do is some of the coolest stuff in the world.
Bruce and I have been friends for 20, 24, 25 years. We have kids the same age. We played pool together forever. And I've known him most of the time that he's at AT&T. But the math of this scenario was my light bulb moment. Was when I sat with him and I was like, so what we're really trying to solve here is the fact that 250 companies that are needing to be interoperable with the other companies, and they're trying to do it one at a time without a concentrated effort. How many are there to do? It's 31,125 unique interfaces. It's just not possible to get everybody on the same page to do it. But if you make it so that you have a standard common canonical, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And now everybody can write to one standard, and if you got a little imp that reads that standard, and you got that as a license agreement, that 31,125 goes to 250. And that's tenable. That's something we can do. And if we take 25 of the state of Texas to get started with, it's momentum generating.
So my only thing, I don't think what we're looking is for interoperability. What we're looking is for interconnectedness, because you're bringing the platform and everybody's connecting into you.
It's really a good point, because interoperability is really where we're doing business together, but interconnectedness is where we're sharing data together. And the way that our contracts are written up with people, Louis, we don't own this data. It's your data. It's your data that's been hashed into a anonymized form that the other systems can read that hash.
Yeah. So the thing is that when you start talking about interoperability from a sales perspective, right now we're talking about strategic. I was like, I don't want to share data with you.
Yeah.
Why would I do that, right? But now if everybody's sharing data into a pool, now the sell approach is completely different, because I'm like, hey, I don't want to control it. Everybody that pulls in will have control of the data. And that's a different selling strategy altogether.
And Louis, you're absolutely correct. And one of the points I would emphasize on the slide here is around neutrality, right? So neutrality is essential. And as we are referencing a neutral utility, one of the things that we always want to make sure every company like yours understand is that our intent is not to either A, augment, or B, detract from your unique value proposition. How you go to market, how you acquire customers, how you drive your customer experience process is yours and remains unique. We are simply working on how you drive this overall process to bring the industry together so that we can evolve from this 3% perspective market share that Michael referenced to certainly move forward. And as you move forward, cleanse the data as well and make the customer experience process overall better.
I agree. I'm sorry. Let me take my comments back to the beginning. So from this point, the way I'm speaking is like I'm part of the team. I want this team to work. So I'm just giving my hints I'm giving to you is not because I'm the CEO of the company. I'm just like part of the team.
Louis, that's the whole point of this whole thing.
Okay, no, because I think that the way I worded, the way he replies like I'm just taking part of my company. No, man, I'm just dumping information to you guys based on what I've seen. Training our sales representatives. Say this, not say that, because I really want this to work.
Thank you.
And it looks like I'm up. Hi, Jeff Herle. I'm the VP of Operations. Good morning to all. And Michael and Louis, yes, interoperability is absolutely key. One of the things we've been doing is aligning on data standards and working with the standards bodies, GS1, IEEE, BITA. We've had them included in some of our early governance meetings as well as early discussions. So as we work on those data standards, we're definitely going to be in alignment with the governing bodies. That IMP that was talked about earlier, we have a version of that, and that is the ATR software, or anonymized transaction relay, that would sit with each DFM and basically automates the send receive of transaction signals to our ingestion engine in the clearinghouse. It's going to automate the removal when you receive transactions. And then one of the things it does in the front end is it anonymizes your private data. So your customer data, your internal transaction data, so that basically you're sending clean data out of your system to the clearinghouse. The diagram to the right walks through that. So a shipper sends out a load. A load gets posted. So a number of these 7 have a load posted. And a carrier sends out capacity. So as you can see, a number of them have capacity sitting. Well, one of the DFMs actually does the match. So they're able to book the load, confirm it, and actually start sending the truck en route. Well, the system, that DFM system, sends to the ATR those transaction data elements that are unique to that load, such as shipping order number, driver name, driver phone number. But the company, that is the DFM company's information, is anonymized. So none of that is shared with the clearinghouse. Anything coming out of your system is clean data. Once it gets to the ingestion system, in the ingestion service within DFM data, we then push it out to the other DFMs it pings their ATRs with the unique data elements saying, do you have one of these in an open status in your system? If it does, if it sees one of those, their system responds, yes, I've got one of those, and it's to be closed or purged. The ATR then sends a signal back to the DFM Data Corp ingestion service saying, yes, we've just purged out all of these ancillary trucking capacity as well as loads. So it collects that information and provides it then in aggregate to the DFMs. So that's the way, I guess that, if you would, an IMP or the ATR sits in the DFM's tech stack and helps clear out by first sending, and then also when other DFMs complete a booked transaction, receiving the transaction information that helps them clear their systems.
That's well explained, Jeff. Thank you.
So these are the 6 freight process steps that are required to purge the phantom data. Booking confirmation, en route, the status position updates that you'd get from ELD or GPS systems, when the truck trips the geofence so that it's en route arrived, and then there was a receipt processed on the back end. Those are the 6 steps that basically track the booking as well as the physical movement of goods throughout the system. And then we'll provide the transaction information back out to the DFMs that have the phantom data sitting in their systems.
Right. So are we looking at is this looking at monetization of the process? Like instant payment?
So not currently, but can.
Okay.
And the tokenization of this space to be able to speed the accelerant of payments is on the roadmap to do, but it's a big bite to take at the very beginning. So what we've decided from a team perspective and what we're here sharing today is that this big problem of phantom data is the first of many things that we can solve together. This doesn't require a huge lift on our part. It's just identifying these standard 6 steps, and then we can expand that to as many steps as we want to help solve the monetization issue. And the cash
okay, so let's go back to the second step. All right, so from booking confirmation to pickup, when you break that geofence, right? Most people have like 1 mile circumference geofence, right? On a first come first serve or by appointment, the scenario is completely different, right? So how are we accounting for those events?
So the reason why we keep the status of en route is the fact that there's a lot of exceptionality that takes place between these steps. And the exceptionality we have tracked in our overall flow of what all of the steps are, the 96 steps that take place. Yeah. But for clearing, I don't need them. Okay. I don't need those pieces. I just need enough to be able to signal you, hey, this one's been done, it's already tied up, and if you have it represented in your system, I don't want you to waste 1 minute of time on it. And that's the message I want to send to you. In the future, after there's 20 others like you sitting at the table that are here to be able to get the best use, what's the best squeeze for this what's the best juice that we can get for this squeeze? Okay. Then we're going to look at it and say, okay, so how do we settle this? Let's talk to Triumph Pay and see if we can get our money in a day from each of the digital freight matching companies that are also here in Texas that make it so that the settlement instrument is taking place from real-time visibility of the signature capture from each of the participating companies that are part of the ecosystem. And the second big feature of this is co-brokering of loads. So if you don't have a match,
you don't want to.
No, it's not double brokering, it's co-brokering. And the difference between the two of them, though, is where data comes in and where smart contracts come in. And the reason why we're not leading with that is because of what you just did right there. It is scary.
Painful.
I know, it's scary territory, but it's also really positive territory for you to be able to say yes to your customer every time. And when you can say yes to your customer calling you and you have confidence that you can reach out to your brothers that are in DFMs, that are part of the same network, that have the same accountability, you can use one of their trucks to be able to say yes to one of your customers.
Oh, I'm all about joint ventures, without a doubt, because that's where everybody's going. It's just the reliability between companies that comes into play, because we've been dealing with that for the last couple of
So
months.
love this discussion, and
Awesome.
happy to get into more and more of it, because the
Let's
key
do it, man.
performance indicators of what the interoperability are between those companies, and when I'm opening up my customers' loads to other capacity, and when I'm not doing it, is all in your control. The way we envision this is that every one of the DFMs has their own portal, and their portal has 5 modules. There's a module for accounting, there's a module for operations, there's a module for IT, there's a module for every function that happens in the system. And when there's new functionality that's needed, it comes from people like you that are part of this, that say, we need this new feature to do this, and our governance model ingests that feature request. It brings it to the working group for it to be able to be built from an idea into an issue that then goes to Karen's company as a workflow development project for her to be able to add to the technology stack.
Like it.
Yeah, that's why I knew you were going to like the governance piece, because it's just, we want you to lead it. We don't want to lead. We want to. We realize that there's a closed-knit technology bridge that we got to keep really secure, and that should become blockchain and distributed when it's appropriate for the right users that we have. But to get started, we need some folks that are like-minded, just about, let's do this. Let's make it so that we don't deal with this garbage anymore.
Yes, let's do it.
So that's why we keep these first steps, and the en route is truly, the truck is here, my stuff is going to fit in it, and he's going to take it. I don't take it off the market until then. So the first 2 sessions here of booked and book confirmation, soft commit. I got it targeted. I've looked at every one of the DFMs and I know exactly where it's sitting. I don't blow it away until en route happens. When the shipment says, yeah, he's left with that, it's gone. That point, everybody gets a notice. Yep, that shipment I told you about before that's likely going to go, it's gone. But all that happens digitally. So there's no people sitting there clicking buttons. It's messaging about these statuses.
Like it. Yeah, I'm scratching as we go.
Cool. Like it.
Good dialogue. So here's a little more in-depth view of the tech stack. On the left-hand side, you can see shipper, carrier, driver, truck, who provide information to each of the DFMs in the example. They've got an ATR embedded in their tech stack. Once a load is booked, confirmed, and then en route, that ATR pushes information to the data ingestion service. The data ingestion service then routes that information, again, anonymized information, back to the ATRs of the other DFMs cleaning their systems. And you can see some of the grayed out components here. Those are future potentials based on, working group ideation and, feature selection.
All the stuff we were just talking about, that's going to come from that intelligence service, hot database, intelligence API that's going to be able to pull from the data lake of everything that's been gathered through these steps for analysis purposes that's never been able to be done before.
Okay, so then the question is, and we had this conversation over the Zoom, is that eventually you're gonna kick DAT out of the curve, right? And what I'm saying is because
I think their role will change.
we tried to make them change it.
I'm not going to try to make them change.
No,
I think they'll adapt as the market changes. We have a critical advantage here. We have real-time.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is, and I mean, I don't want to offend Hedera, but this is like a Ripple Swift problem, right? This is what I'm seeing, because here's what you guys have in here, and I hope you guys realize it. You have DAT doesn't account for tank endorsement, doesn't account for hazmat, doesn't account for heavy loads. It's just a standardized load, right? So now you're getting feedback into the market, and so the market's feeding you information, and you blast it out to the network. Hey, this is how much we did this lane for. So for the next 24 hours, everybody that moves through that lane, that's a competition. Try to match it there or get it lower.
Or count on the fact that somebody doesn't use that reference source.
But they're missing out on the money.
They are. There's no question. That's part of doing the business. But you got a lot of people that are owner-operators that they're not paying attention to the next load that they're going on. They're just trying to keep moving.
Yeah.
that is, you got me moving someplace, I'm pretty good to go. They didn't go check DAT's pricing. And that's where brokers make a lot of money, because they know that the market will bear a price that the carrier who is ill-informed.
They don't make a lot of money, they drive the money.
Yeah.
But awesome conversation.
Yep. So,
Like,
Good. Well, in terms of industry rollout, basically we're at the point where we're ready to establish the minimum viable ecosystem. We need 7 DFMs, early adopters, who want to work with us to finalize that ATR configuration. We've got the architecture set, but it really is putting that translation layer from their system to the data standards so that we can push that out to the ingestion engine and then to the rest of the DFMs to, again, ping and see if they have any of that phantom data residing in their systems. Phase 2, continue to recruit early adopters from the 25 to 40 range in terms of DFMs. And then the intent is by third quarter of next year, August, I believe is the specific month, to have elections of DFMs that have been participating as equity members and elect them to governing seats within our governance structure. And with that, I will turn it over to Denise McCurdy.
Thanks, Jeff. So we've referred to governance quite a bit throughout this presentation so far, and I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about that. We have focused much of our efforts here and our time because, and there's a lot of research that supports this, but one of the greatest barriers to blockchain adoption is a lack of structured governance. It's not the technology. As much as I love the technology, it's not really that which holds us up. So we recognize that. We said, okay, we really need to double down on governance. It's just required to facilitate communication and trust amongst partners.
So let me go back for just 1 second, because there was a word that was on there that can be a scary word, and I just want to be able to touch on it because it wasn't said, but the word is antitrust law. And it's a word that I wasn't terribly familiar with prior to really tracking down this venture, but it's caused several months of strategic objective and governance negotiations to be able to facilitate. But the antitrust laws have really been established around price fixing, around being able to market control, to be able to unduly close down the competitive nature of an industry. And that is the furthest thing from what DFM Data Corp is designed for as its governance. We are 100% here to be able to assist the marketplace in adopting digital methodologies of current state of technology so that the enhancements towards real-time interoperability, data cleansing, and sharing can truly take place. But in doing so, we have, as a charter, part of our organization, to be able to maintain the antitrust laws as the forefront of every one of our governance meetings that takes place. We have a statement that we read at the beginning of the meeting that everybody confirms and agrees to, and what we're here to be able to accomplish. And it's truly for the betterment of the industry and not for the purpose of being able to try to reduce the ability for competition amongst the competitors in any way. But just wanted to put it up here quickly because it is on this slide, and don't want to bypass it. It is an imperative part of the utility structure that DFM Data Corp is taking on in its governance capacity of being able to help facilitate DFM interoperability.
Yeah, good. Yeah, definitely. Excellent point. In fact, we've spent a lot of time. And to that end, if you could go to the next slide then, David. So what have we done to support this and this important concept that Michael just said? So a few months ago, we presented a governance structure based on best practice research that captured some broad concepts. We then asked our partners to help validate our thinking on this governance structure. We listened to their thoughts, and then we developed a governance framework that's specific to DFM DC and their needs that we think is like a flexible but orderly scaffolding. And it includes, of course, the antitrust. And that scaffolding represents, among other things, member votes, member rights, steering committee, charters for 5 working groups, and all of the necessary legal underpinnings that ecosystem partners can sign confidently. And of course, one of those is antitrust. And I know the governance and all this kind of stuff isn't the super fun, sexy, techie stuff that we all really gravitate to, but without it, you just don't get very far.
Yeah, and just got to share briefly the fact that we're sitting here at Hedera Hashgraph. I just want to share that their governance model is one that is, it has truly been an exemplar for us to be able to pattern the fairness component of what an ecosystem looks like to enable a governing body or a governing ecosystem to be able to survive. Hedera Hashgraph has a consensus algorithm that they work with and really look to be able to do high volume transaction processing. Their business model aligns very closely with the type of governance that we were looking to be able to create. And in full transparency, the discussions with Hedera actually led us to some legal counsel that was beneficial in being able to set up the initial bylaws and structure for Hedera, and we contracted with that same recommended attorney to be able to facilitate the true meaning and feeling behind what we're trying to be able to do. So big thanks for Hedera and for Texas Blockchain Council for helping to make that connection, because Keith was a real asset for being able to facilitate bringing together the governments.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're in fact one of the partners that helped us several months ago. We're going to see these 2 sites in more detail, so you'll see those, and you'll see why this structure is so important and why it did take so long. But it is important to note that the structure of the steering committee, which owns the strategic direction of the utility, there are 11 members, but 7 votes. And the DFM members actually represent 6 of those 7 votes. And it was really important for us to not just say that the DFMs are driving this, but to actually give them those voting privileges. And this is all codified in this governance framework that is now part of the corporate bylaws. So it is not, these aren't just pretty charts, but it's actually, these are IP attorney signed and approved legal documents that I think we can all feel confident, again, that we can sign these and go, okay, we are covered from a governance perspective. We're going to let you guys have these slides because this sort of goes into more detail about the types of member classes that we have for DFMs. And you'll see, Michael alluded to this earlier, but there's a class N, everyone would join as that, and then they'll have an option to purchase equity in the company, which is what that class EA is. And with that, they also have the ability to vote on the steering committee and be one of those 6 votes. And once we vote on this, then we actually move to implementation. It's a pretty flat structure. And
just to be clear from this chart, the EN structure that's to the right-hand side, it doesn't exist today. It is truly for the 41st company that is wanting to be able to be involved as an equity participant is what opens that round of participation. So there's literally 40 seats for the EA members, and the initial steering committee members that are, the elections will be held in March, as we just described, will be from those initial 40 DFM members.
That's a good point, Michael. We've spent a lot of time thinking about this and testing this and going back to the attorneys and making certain that what we're presenting really is logical, that it hangs together, that it's fair, and that it's transparent, and that DFM members can join this, go and say, okay, I see where I fit into this, and I see why this is actually a fair and equitable arrangement. And oh, by the way, I also have, a vote in the company, which is, it's a different business model, but we think it's the right one for this, for the DFMDC utility.
And I still feel so good about hearing our conversation where this is, Denise, and remembering the first contract that you and I ever put together for our work together. And as frosty as that sounded, of being all ice cream and licorice, we really stayed pretty true, not pretty true, completely true to the guiding principle of how to be able to set up the governance of the organization. I really thank you for that.
Yes, and for those who've been involved in consortium building, you'll know that it sounds easier than it actually is. It takes some heavy lifting. But again, we've been working with our partners as we've been going through this, so we haven't done this in isolation. And if you want to go to the next slide, which just talks more about the 5 working groups that I had alluded to. So we have a framework and charters for all 5. Of course, we have more details for each one of these as far as the goals and the timelines and that sort of thing. But you know, we feel like these are the right 5 to start with, and we've actually stood up the operations working group, and Jeff Herle is the DFMDC lead on that one. And finally, on the next slide, so to facilitate this ecosystem, we built an online platform that allows members to communicate their ideas, vote for their collective favorites, and then push these to the steering committee for final vote and implementation. And that's what the graph on the right depicts. Again, this is a fairly flat structure, but we really wanted to codify this, not just in legal documents and emails and you know, Word docs, but to actually build it into this platform, because the overarching intent is to provide this transparency. And it's actually a pretty cool tool to all onboarded members. So when you get onboarded, you actually see, oh, here's how I vote. Oh, here's how, you know, my onboarding process. Oh, here's the ideas. And it's a visual feast as well. It's a management tool, but also really helps us all stay on one page.
It helps DFM Data Corp be accountable to its customers. I mean, that's the biggest part of it, is the fact that we recognize we have 250 customers right now that we have as our target, and it's not we hope to have them, that they are our customer already. They may not recognize it already, but we're very focused on being able to facilitate their needs before they even know them themselves.
So with that, I will hand it, assuming there's no questions, I'll hand it over to Mike.
Thank you, Denise. And again, as we move into this next discussion around the future of interoperability amongst the DFMs, one of the things I'll frame is that we can't get to the future without the rigor of the current. And Denise just discussed the rigor of the process we have in place from a governance standpoint to ensure participants understand how the engagement process works. Phase 1 here, as we envision, once we get, and Jeff talked about the 6 steps that are being shared, and we get this phantom data problem solved, then we can talk about variables that, from a sales standpoint, I like, and that we can discuss different things from a future standpoint. There's significant possibilities, and we just listed a few of them, but as Michael referenced, this is DFMs for DFMs, and a lot of these ideas will emanate from the working groups, and the ideas coming from the working groups that will facilitate how we move forward and how DFMs will agree to interoperate. But nonetheless, co-brokering, we envision safe, legal, and transparent to all stakeholders. This is not double brokering, this is co-brokering. If there's an opportunity where there's idle capacity in a particular DFM marketplace, there could be an opportunity from a co-brokering standpoint where it's agreed upon how those rules of engagement will operate. Once we bring all this data together, and Louis, you mentioned some of that already, there are different real-time indices and analytics that we can facilitate. And once we get this data, then quite frankly, we're going to be in as a DFM industry group, a very different, unique scenario to understand how that data begins to unfold new opportunities that didn't exist. It's easy to sit here, 20 years later and think about the things we're doing, but there are some things that we're doing now that weren't even envisioned 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And we believe that those things will emanate as we go forward. And then carbon credits derived from blockchain documented deadhead miles reductions. Once we get this data together, we understand the metrics that are being unfolded through the passing of data back and forth, anonymized, we can then understand as we're reducing miles that are taking place. Phantom loads, quite frankly, impacts miles. And there are travels that are happening where capacity is not being utilized effectively, or you've got loads transported to where they should not have gone. So those are things that once we get the KPIs aligned, we can start to get year-over-year metrics that we can bring some of these things to bear from a marketplace perspective.
Mike, on that one, I think the co-brokering affects that carbon credits as well.
That's very true.
Where you're able to get a closer truck as opposed to something that may be miles away. and reduce those number of miles.
Great point. Another KPI that we're talking about doing as well. You're right, Jeff.
Yeah.
So we were just having a little sidebar here too about the carbon credits. And in Europe, there's a much more established carbon credit footprint calculus. But here in the US, there's a lot of companies that are talking about their neutrality and timeframes and when they're going to be neutral, but that requires scorekeeping. And scorekeeping has been identified as measurable improvement that is quantified through choice, through action, through making a decision to be able to do something. And to me, one of the areas that is most obvious for being able to quantify a carbon credit is if within a marketplace, you have a capacity that's 53 miles away to be able to move this load, but you could just do a quick search through the other marketplaces and there happened to be a truck that was 13 miles away. Yeah. There's 40 miles of green emissions that are captured right there from making a decision, and it is literally quantifiable right there on the spot.
Awesome.
Those should be earned tax credits at the moment of transaction, and there hasn't been a way to do that before. You couldn't collect for that. You couldn't identify the savings took place, but when you've got the data, you can. And as soon as you can claim it, you can claim the credit for it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of benefits there in the carbon credits side of things, but the US has been slow to adopt a mechanism for being able to score it. But I think the tokenization side helps that a lot, and us being able to truly quantify what the mileage savings is from a different decision is a key performance indicator, but a key performance indicator that I think will ultimately drive the government side to be able to say, yeah, it's a worthy tax credit.
I also really like when I think about what's just over the horizon, because we've established the interoperability, is that these, if you just look at these three bullets, you're looking at a pretty significant enhancement to the customer experience, and the need, like a stickiness will emerge where there's a need for shippers, carriers, and brokers to go with digital freight, at a level that currently, it's about visibility mostly. But when you get into the ability to truly get the closest truck, to have really in-depth understanding about what's really happening with the industry through the analytics, and then these carbon credits are really going to be critical to operating. Companies like Amazon are committing billions to become net neutral.
So as we move into the next slide, DFM Data Corp is a win-win opportunity. We've had discussions with a number of digital freight matching organizations and the leadership of those companies. And quite frankly, there's strong consensus around the need to purge phantom data, around the need to find ways to be more cooperative, to interoperate. And as we then talk about those aspects, DFM Data Corp provides a software, infrastructure, and a service for the purging of phantom data. We need the DFMs to participate by becoming members, as we talked about, and then sharing data. Ultimately, DFM Data Corp is both the solution for the phantom data problem and also any concerns around the patent process for digital freight matching. DFM Data Corp has been provided the exclusive license rights to do the removal of phantom data from the marketplace and position the solution that we've been referencing. And in order for us to do that and move forward, we're asking companies to share the data, to look at the transaction process, and then understand how, as we bring the companies together and bring the data together, we can then facilitate the purging and then the other aspects that we talked about before from a solution set standpoint. So this is around forward looking. It's around how do we ensure that the patent process is then facilitated from a forward-moving perspective, and then ultimately, how do we onboard the team members and DFMs to facilitate that win-win strategy.
And one of the things that we discovered from this antitrust discussion, just to be able to kind of put it here at the very beginning and really put it out in front, it is not our ability based off the antitrust to be able to tell anybody what they are to do with this fee or with this structure, but there are clearly options for the 250 DFM service provider or gaining of service from DFM Data Corp to be able to either absorb a charge from DFM Data Corp as part of their business operating expense, or to pass on that charge to their customers, or to use that charge as a profit center. But I think it's essential from a messaging standpoint from these DFMs that this is viewed as a true win-win for them. This is a license to charge your customer a transaction fee on a service that you already provide. It is an additional revenue stream. It is a new revenue stream that is one that will help a lot of people make their bonuses, because it's literally a new category of revenue inside of their company.
But not only that, it just incentivizes people to behave well in the marketplace.
Right, they're participating in a clean space. They
Correct.
want to play in a clean space, and they want to be, eventually what we ultimately want is that DFM logo piece to be a seal of approval, right? If you've got the logo, then
Like UL.
you're in, you're
Perfect,
United
yeah.
Laboratories, you are one of the ones that's approved to be able to do this. And we have a mechanism in place, Louis, that we haven't gone over, and it's not part of our presentation, but that logo is actually, we're actually close to the end of it, so I'll hold my comment here for a second.
All right, next slide there. Thanks. Jeff?
Yeah, the headline here is we're ready to onboard DFMs. We've been working on this for 18 months. We've got the ATR architecture in place and looking for DFMs to finalize the structure. We've gone through the IBM Accelerator program and clearly have partnered with a premier provider of IBM services in the name of Kilroy. We've done our due diligence around antitrust. As a matter of fact, lead off every single one of our governance meetings with a reading of the antitrust statement. We've got a membership structure, rules, and agreements all in place, as you saw with Denise, as well as the IP license agreement. We have governance structure and procedures that makes it fair and even across the board so that everyone knows exactly their roles and responsibilities, but also that everyone will be treated the same across the governance structure. And then lastly, we've got a DFM collaborative online platform that allows easy access to not only the content that we provide, but also their ability to ideate, vote, qualify new set of features coming into the system.
So instead of talking next steps, we want to talk about taking action. So steps to become a member. Jeff already referenced the portal that we have for the DFM process in order to receive credentials and log in to review the documents. Execute the non-binding memorandum of understanding. So there's an MOU that's in play. Choose the desired membership level, not equity or equity, but keeping in mind that from a DFM standpoint, we referenced before there are two different classes that are available. Execute the member agreement, the license agreement. We want company representatives to be appointed with usernames and passwords. We will then walk through the technology onboarding process collectively with said organization. And we absolutely want company representatives to be a part of the working groups in order for us, again, to facilitate the ideas, as Jeff said, to use that word ideate, to bring those things together that is going to move the industry forward overall. Other aspects of how you can take action. We certainly have some DFMs who've expressed the desire to be a part of the second wave, and we kind of talked about what that second wave is. But quite frankly, we're looking for DFM organizations who are ready to kickstart the platform. And we need 7 DFMs. That's why we came to Texas. That's why we are asking the question, is Texas ready to lead the digital freight industry? We want that process to take place. Form a Texas DFM Alliance. Texas can be the example, showing DFMs can come together in the spirit of coopetition. We already referenced before that there are so many other ancillary aspects that are tangent to what we're talking about, not just the Texas DOT corridor project, but Michael also referenced the aspects of the autonomous vehicle structure and strategy. But I think we all know you can't get to that vision without having cleansed information and cleansed data and cleansed connectivity processes that are facilitating an autonomous vision. That cannot happen if you're sending vehicles to the wrong places from an electronic standpoint or a non-human perspective.
About is the fact that he's on his way someplace to go deliver, and then he gets a cancellation because it was a load that was already booked. I don't know what happens to a truck that's driving down the highway at 65 miles an hour and now has no destination. That's a hard programming problem to solve for. I really don't know how to do it. I mean, you defer the deletion of it until they get off the highway, and then they sit on the side of the road, or they return back to terminal to be redispatched from there. So somehow the autonomous assets have to be dispatched just like a driver in the asset. And if they can't solve that dispatching issue as part of the autonomous movement that's taking place here in Texas, it will slow down the adoption of autonomous vehicles. And what's interesting is we referred to this patent and brought it up, but the patent is about matching available loads to available drivers, to available tractors, to available shipments, to drivers, tractors, and trailers. If you remove the driver from that, you could kind of make the argument that it's an autonomous driver. It's still a driver. It's still a computer that's driving it. But it's the future. It's where this is going. And there's a lot of money that's gone into those spaces for them to be able to help solve these problems. If they were aware, which now they are from the discussions that I had earlier this week about what our efforts are, the quote at the end of the call was phenomenal. I wish I had it recorded, but it was basically just, we can't get where we're going without you guys doing what you're doing. So we're a big supporter of what you're trying to be able to get accomplished. And I asked for a quote for it, and he told me that he would write it and send it to me, and I haven't gotten it yet, but it was a real good feel-good moment of the fact that there's, ancillary pull that's coming from that side of the industry for the autonomous vehicle component. So I think that having a home here in Dallas and the momentum that it's getting from a legislation side is a real pinnacle element of answering the question of, is Texas the state to lead the digital freight industry?
And Michael, I throw an interesting analogy out as well. The financial industry went from paperless to, we all have credit cards or debit cards in our possession. And quite frankly, Visa, MasterCard, Discovery, all these companies had to agree upon data standards in order for the credit card industry or the debit card industry to flourish. Could you imagine if you're walking into a place and you're pulling out your credit card or debit card to do a transaction and you walk out, it's a phantom transaction? Or it wouldn't exist. You can't do it. And that industry would not flourish today without solving that governance issue. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. While it's at this 3% market share phase, solving it now allows us to evolve other variables that can expand the industry and bring upon the adoption that's needed.
Good point, Mike.
David, turn it back to you then.
Hi. So we certainly would love to see this alliance come together in Texas, and it's a very basic thought, really, and it's just we think Texas. Why wouldn't it be Texas? It's the Lone Star State, after all. So to that end, we have a couple of asks in addition to, hey, let's get you guys onboarded and become members. We mentioned earlier that there's this national survey that we put together, and that the intent of the survey is to quantify the effects of phantom data so it's well understood. When I was talking about there are labor inefficiencies that rise out of it. Well, what are the numbers associated with that? We would love to offer to really any DFMs who are hearing this video today to take the survey, as individuals take the survey, but have your team and your customers take it too. The survey is segmented for shippers, carriers, and brokers and platform operators. And and we can provide to you, if you would like it, just have to ask, comparative results. So if you wanted to see how your company is being affected directly, what are the effects on your particular operation versus the industry, we're happy to provide that segmented report. And then another little thing, I think Michael mentioned it earlier that, as we've been speaking to DFM thought leaders and industry operators, or platform operators, and they've gone from what do you guys do to there's this phantom data problem, to interoperability is the fix, to we have a patent on matching, and we're going to give you a license, and if you can share your data, we're going to fix the problem, we're going to all become interoperable, and it's going to open up this wide open space. We see people sort of like, what do you do? And skepticism about the patent convert to, wow, this is such a great vision. And we know that for some companies, like Mike was just saying, some companies, they're busy, they got stuff going on, but and they're happy to jump in at a later phase, but they are already knowing they're going to do this, and because it's fundamental. It's just an obvious fundamental for the industry. And so one by one, we're asking the thought leaders, the industry leaders who get it, to just speak up. It's important for the industry to take a stand. It's important for individuals in the industry to take a stand, so that everybody understands we all have to do this together. The industry has to move together. It's a big ask for an industry to do that, especially one that hasn't come together before as an industry. But at the same time, the group benefit, the greater good, is so simple and obvious. So we put together this statement that we're asking those who are willing to agree to. It's not an endorsement of DFM Data Corp. It's an endorsement of the need to do this. Phantom data is a growing problem in digital freight with significant impacts to the customer experience, efficiency, and profitability. It requires industry-wide DFM interoperability to eliminate phantom data, which takes industry-wide DFM coordination and cooperation. And we're finding that really anybody who sits through a few minutes of what we do and why it's important absolutely agrees with the statement. So we're going to be launching our new website in a few days, and we'll start to aggregate people's raising of the hand. So we appreciate that very much so, actually. It will help everyone.
I'm a big believer in the new term of interconnectedness as opposed to interoperability, as I've watched the slide.
I like it.
What we're doing right now is literally much more accurately described as interconnectedness. What we will be able to do with the participation of each of these companies is to achieve interoperability. And it's limited interoperability or selective interoperability, or
so even if you do, if me and you are operating simultaneously, there is no need for DFM. Because at that point, DFM is what brings all the softwares together, right? So if we are interoperable, why would I need the DFM? We sharing data right now, right? So I don't think at any given point we'll get to that point and then if we get to that point, then DFM will become irrelevant. Think about that for a second.
So I have, and it would be utopia to be able to make it that this problem is completely solved and the industry owns a data lake.
Well, the co-brokering, that's what he does. Think about it for a second.
I realize that, but that's not a bad problem to have. If it eliminates the phantom information and each of these companies now can process more transactions, all votes rise. They all do that.
Okay.
So there's so much room to grow from the 3% that we're at right now, that if we remove this phantom piece, I just want every one of these companies that's already doing this to be able to take more market share from those contract rates that are stuck in from some RFP from 6 months ago or a year ago that isn't market price now. And somebody's getting screwed on it, whether it was the shipper who quoted it wrong and who received the quote and accepted it, or the carrier that quoted it wrong. It's
a lot. Last month, the top 10 companies only owe 70% of the freight industry. The other 30%. The other 70% It's at the mercy of whoever.
That's correct. Yeah, it's actually the second one that you said, that the top 10 companies together don't own 30% of the market.
Right.
Normally, the top 10 companies on the market own 80% of the market. In this case, we're so fragmented. We're all over the place that we don't want to eliminate any of the DFMs. We need them. We need them to be a conduit for collecting real-time transactions. But when you got Budweiser that is working, or Anheuser-Busch, that's working with Convoy and Transfix, and every time they've got 100 loads to be able to move, they put those same 100 loads in 3 different platforms. They have created 200 phantom capacities, and they're not solving for that problem. They're doing it every day, every shift. And
I agree with you. That interoperability, I think I have to explore that a little bit more. From your point of view, not from my point of view. I got a different point of view. Apparently, you got something bigger. Something that I didn't see in there is dummy loads to quote lanes.
So there's some tracking and KPIs related to loads that are posted and then made not real. So in our system, when we look for a data load from somebody, it's not just a Dallas to Atlanta 53-footer. It's zip code in Dallas to zip code in Atlanta with available pickup time, with pickup number, with order number, with PO number, all hashed together into a randomized hashing engine that then hashes it again, that goes out to the other imps to be able to unhash it and extract those pieces back out. So when somebody is posting that price discovery load, they would have to lie. And they would have to put in a PO number that was bogus. And if they did, then they would be one of those actors in their DFM that has one of their unique customer numbers that posted a shipment that was canceled 2 hours later. And if that shipper did that on numerous occasions, I would never know about it because they just posted it, they got a price, they got rid of it. They never got to execution of the load.
So I think I'm just going through scenarios in the head. So I post a reference number, it goes to the block, the nonce number become now the pickup number, right? Or the reference number becomes a pickup number, and the chain, the block nonce number will become the reference number, right? So now you cannot do a dummy load. Now it's like the blockchain certified.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. We're tying the pieces of the transaction from origin zip code to destination zip code. So a number that's tying that transaction as an order number to the date that it's available and the time that the pickup is available. You can't duplicate it. There isn't a duplicate for it. It's got enough unique characteristics in the hashed number that make it so that it is unique. And if it's posted in other places, you're going to get the exact duplicate information. That's when you eliminate it.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering because it is although it's a useful tool to quote a lane, what you're trying to do is useless, actually create more waste. So how, I'm just thinking aloud, how am I going to now quote a lane if I cannot put a double load on the board for somebody to give me quotes on it?
So that's an operating scenario that you're working with that I believe our data set won't change your operations today, but as you have access to greater data from those lanes, you will have a competitive advantage because of your flow of information.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Your pricing engine will be from what your visibility is to the current market conditions, much like FreightWaves offers, but FreightWaves pulls everything that they have from contract rates.
Actually, the more I think about it, the more clear it is. The RSQ will be completely eliminated.
They're gone.
Yep.
Yeah, and what'll happen is I'll trust the market, just like I trust my Uber. When I click the button and it says Jill is 7 minutes away.
Yep.
I know that Jill is driving a Honda Accord and she's 7 minutes and I can watch her come to my place. I want that same confidence when I work and book a load with any of the DFMs. Johnny with truck ABC123 and trailer 78512 is arriving at your location at such and such a time. Those assets are currently at this location.
Perfect.
That's the visibility that you want to get to. Just like you'd see in a warehouse, which warehouse person is taking this order to go to this bin location to pick this thing and to reduce the inventory from there until the order gets shipped. It's the same thing. It's an allocation of effort but it's just on a global scale. right? Instead of being one marketplace.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great stuff, man. It expands your mind. It just all of a sudden you're just thinking of, well, this is going to
Simplify everything.
simplify so many problems that we built so many workarounds around that I just won't have to do them anymore. Just won't have to do them anymore. There will be a trust factor that I don't have to go back and check on that driver. Did he actually dispatch? He's gone. It's done. It's done and it's written and there's accountability and records and KPIs and scorecards and all this. How we doing, guys? Are we done? Did we cover our?
No, this was great. Thank you so much for everyone to attend and to be so engaged with us. We really appreciate it.
And that would be very helpful if Lee or Karen and any other thoughts that you might have. It's great dialogue between Michael and Lewis. And while we're on the Zoom, before I know you're going to have some roundtable discussion as well. And any other feedback from you all will be helpful to hear.
Lee and I, we've been talking about this for a while. When I first thought of it, I'm like, wow, Lee's putting all this together with the Texas Blockchain Council and Texas Blockchain Service Network, and Michael's got the perfect application for it. And we've got such a great ecosystem in Texas, such a entrepreneurial spirit of folks getting together to make money and build the economy. And I just thought it was a great match. And I hope that y'all give it a chance and get in touch with these folks because they've worked really hard at putting this all together. And I see Luis, is understanding what's going on, and we're ready. We're ready.
We are ready. Lee, what do you got, sir?
Just two things. One, the legislature wants to see successful pilots, and they want to see this work. And I think this is the most impactful one that we've got lined up for sure of the three. The other thing I have is when you said carbon credits, I wasn't thinking this, but yesterday we had a company that's in our network that's out of Houston that they do sustainability carbon, blockchain work. And they could probably provide some good insights on how to reap the most tax credits for the DFMs on blockchain piece. And they can give you some, thoughts on that.
That's great, because there's going to be leaders that come in those areas because it is still underdeveloped. And like I said, I think the tokenization helps everybody understand that a little better than they did many years ago when it was first talked about of tax credits. But it's great to see Europe having some success there. And
that's where they got most of their business. It was toppled. Remember, they're out of the Netherlands. They're out of Houston, but most of their business has been out of the Netherlands. That's where their revenue is coming from. So they would be thrilled to give you a lot of insight and not charge you for it because they're just a wealth of knowledge.
Sure. Well, we appreciate those sort of contacts because they fit into this ecosystem as what we call contributing members. And contributing members are like the ELD providers or a GPS tracking device or an IoT sensor device. They don't do freight matching, but they help enable it. And they're next door neighbors to it. And we want to be friendly with them. We want to include them in the fact that they're an element of this, but they're an element of this. They're not our target customer. Our target customer are the DFMs. Those are the people that we serve. And if those DFMs say that they want to be able to have ELDs do this thing different, then we're going to help them to be able to facilitate that change taking place with the DFM space. But engaging in those partner companies, those conjoined companies to the space is really important. And frankly, it was something that we didn't think of initially, but that's part of how the antitrust law comes in play. Is that you have to be able to have an open door for new people to be able to come in and say what they're going to do. And we'll take that burden on. We'll do that. We'll make that part of our mission to be able to do of engaging with those contributing members and managing the government side to facilitate the growth of the consortium. I think it's the only way it can happen successfully, and just really humbled to be here at this point after the 18 months worth of work, and thrilled to watch my team put on a presentation that tells the story of what we can do. And
we'll put it up.
Thanks, Molly. Yeah. Texas is a place to start from. I mean, it would be a great place to start from. We'd love to be able to. I would set up a shop here. I'd make it so that there's a place for us to have a presence that's part of the state, and you know, continue working with Karen and the other DFMs that are here. It's just a natural story for me. I mean, I look at the Lone Star State flying into the flag, and I'm like, this is the way to do this. There's 50 states that can follow a path here. Let's do this. It's a good path. Thrilled for you putting it on. Thanks for having us come and present.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.